The Vatican has announced the death of Pope Francis. Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, died at the age of 88, the Vatican said in a video statement on Monday. The 88-year-old had been discharged from the hospital recently. He suffered various ailments during his 12 years as the Pope. Cardinal Kevin Farrell, in a statement by the Vatican on Telegram channel, announced, and I quote, this morning at 7:35, which is 5:35 GMT, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to home of the Father, unquote. And very unfortunate news coming in there. The Vatican has now announced the death of Pope Francis. Pope Francis was the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church. He died at the age of 88. The Vatican has announced his passing away in a video statement on Monday, which is today. The 88-year-old had been discharged from the hospital recently. He was suffering various ailments. He was serving at the helm of church for 12 years now. His death was announced by Cardinal Kevin Farrell in a statement which was published on Telegram channel of Vatican, which read, and I quote, this morning at 7:35, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to home of the Father.
These are for your children.
All right, breaking news coming in there. As far as Vatican is concerned, the Vatican has now announced the death of Pope Francis. In what would come as a shocker to the Christian community worldwide, Pope Francis passed away at the age of 88 on Monday. Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, died at the age of 88, the Vatican said in a video statement. The 88-year-old had been discharged from hospital recently. He suffered various ailments during his 12 years as the leader of the Roman Catholic Church. My colleague Kartikeya joining us with more details. Kartikeya, a big setback there for the Roman Catholics. Pope Francis has now passed away.
You see, Pope Francis has to be seen in a different light. Pope Francis came from Latin America. Pope Francis succeeded a European pope. In fact, Pope Francis succeeded a very conservative pope who actually retired before his, before his term could end. Let me put it this way: generally, you are pope for life. Pope is actually appointed for life. Pope dies in office. Pope don't retire. So the previous pope had actually taken retirement, and the history, after so many years, the world had two popes for 10 years. So the Roman Catholic had two popes for 10 years. So the preceding pope passed away, but the context in which this pope has to be seen is that he was supposed to be more, I would say, modern. He played football. He actually addressed the issue of the Roman Catholic. You see, one has to understand, unlike Islam or Hinduism, there is a conversion process which takes place in Christianity itself. You are a Catholic, you can be converted to Presbyterian. You are a Presbyterian, you can change your religion to Protestant. You are a Protestant, then you can join another branch of the church. So Christianity that way is very, very diverse. But in this context, he worked with the Roman Catholic. He made them modern in Latin America. He worked with the kids. He ensured that the Catholic Church responded to the modern needs, which is that they could, they could come to the church and play sport. So I would say that Pope Francis was a different breed altogether. He passed away at the age of 88, and he was able to reset the course of the Roman Catholic Church, which emphasized inclusion and care for the marginalized over doctrinal purity. That is very, very important. Most of the popes prioritize doctrinal purity, But this Pope worked for the marginalized community. And I would say that the Latin American Pontiff, he bitterly clashed with the traditionalists. And who are these traditionalists? Most of them came from Germany. Most of them were French. Most of them came from Europe. And that is why his 12-year papacy is going to be remembered in a different way. Francis was a change agent. He inherited a Vatican in disarray after 2013, after the stunning resignation of the predecessor Benedict the 16th, if I am not wrong, a standard bearer of the Roman Catholic conservatism. And Francis steadily steered the church in another direction, restocking his leadership with diverse array of bishops who shared his pastoral, welcoming approach as he sought to open up the church, which means that you had a lot of blacks, you had a lot of brown in the constituency. Many rank and file of the Catholic bishops were very, very new. And this was all because of the Francis. And Francis reached out to the migrants, the poor, and the destitute, to the victims of the sexual abuse by the Catholic clergy members. He was open to their prosecution and to alienated gay Catholics. That is why I'm not using the word progressive, but I'm saying that he functioned in a different way. He was very, 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 very different from his predecessor, Benedict the 15th, who was really very conservative, South German in his approach, and he retired. And he also made way for the Pope Francis because he knew that the winds were blowing in a different direction. And what is a church if you don't have devotees? And that is where the Pope Francis was very important. And he did stumble. I wouldn't say that he didn't encounter problems. He did encounter problems. For example, clerical sex abuse. The Boston Globe story, the burst during his tenure, it became an existential threat to the church. He was open to the investigation. He adopted new rules to hold up top religious leaders, including bishops, accountable if they committed sexual abuse or covered it up, though he did not impose the level of transparency or civil reporting obligations that many advocates demanded. So in a way, he was trying to take things forward without getting legally intertwined in the issue. And the photograph which is running on our channel is something which we have put deliberately. You see, this is the last big public function that the Pope attended. Now, J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States of America, is in India right now. He's going to have a meeting with the Prime Minister Modi at 6:30. And, the trade tariff and other issues are going to be there. And he had come to India taking a detour, which is like he went to Rome, met the Pope, went to the Vatican, and he has landed in India with his children. So, and the final year of the Pope was marred by, it was slowed down. I was not say marred by a bad knee. He had an intestinal surgery. He had respiratory issues, but that they come with old age. He was using a cane and a wheelchair. A lot of people said that, he looked like a diminished figure, but, age gets better of everyone. Yeah. And but he continued to travel. He went to war-torn Africa. So we have to understand the papacy. You see, Roman Catholic Church is a conservative strain within Christianity, like Greek Orthodox, Roman Catholics, Protestants are different, Presbyterians are different. There are multiple branches within Christianity. But when he came from Latin America, he infused a breath of fresh air.
Right.
It's like, suppose, Shweta, to have a pope from India, to have a Southeast Asian pope, imagine that, or to have a pope from China, or to have a pope from Japan, where Christianity was actually persecuted for 350 years. 350 years. So that I would define him as a pathbreaker. He demoted conservatives in Vatican offices, restricted the use of the old Latin masses, dear to the traditionalists, opened influential meetings of bishops to the lay people, including women, allowed priests to bless same-sex couple, and made clear that the transgender people would be godparents and that their children could be baptized. Though they might sound very civic in nature, Shweta, these are civic issues, but that's how I would define his papacy. Ultimately, what do religion govern? They govern sexuality, interfaith issues, marriages,
civil issues.
So suppose the topmost person within the religious theocracy actually make the issues of sexuality, interfaith issues, gender issues, if I may use the much abused word liberal here, more liberal, then I think he ticked all the boxes. Pope Francis ticked all the boxes. And that is why his papacy, his 12-year papacy is very, very different. And I would say his papacy needs to be needs to be seen in that context, Shweta.
Absolutely. Papacy needs to be changed in a context, in an environment where politics was fast evolving. He is known for his legacy where social environmental justice was at core, inclusivity and dialogue was at the core of his papacy. Francis sought to make church more welcoming to the blacks, to women, to LGBTQ, leaves behind a very rich legacy, as my colleague Karthikeya is pointing out. Karthikeya, before I let you go, this is going to also pave the way for how the Roman Catholic Church will evolve in years to come.
Absolutely. Let me give you a couple of more examples, if you permit me, Shweta. For example, he also refused to endorse the calls to deny communion to Catholic politicians, supportive of abortion rights, including when he was president, Joseph Biden Jr., who said Francis had called him a good Catholic. He did not support very conservative issues, and his opponents were very ruthless. The traditional Italian power base of the Vatican grew actually frustrated, with his unpredictable governing style, which relied on small groups of confidants, many of them Jesuits like him and his own gut, in the sense that he was not part of the traditional clergy in Italy. He was working all over the world. That is why he was a different pope. And, conservative Catholics accused him of diluting church teachings and never stopped rallying against him. There was a simmering dissent, periodically which exploded into the view in almost medieval fashion with the talks of schism and heresy. So this Pope was not only battling the problem of lesser converts to Christianity, or keeping the flock together like a good shepherd, as you would say in Christian religion, but his real challenge came within Christianity, because people thought that, he was trying to redefine the doctrinal purity, which he was not. He was trying to keep up with the time. He was trying, but also liberals also went against him, who hoped that he might introduce progressive policies. For example, his openness to frank discussion often gave oxygen to debates among long taboo subjects, including priestly celibacy, communion for divorced and remarried people, and greater role for women in the church. While he opened the doors to talking about such issues, he tended to balk at the major decisions. So, it's not as if he was without contradiction. He knew that he should allow people to talk about these issues, but he could not change everything. So he was dealing with multiple things at the same time. But I would say that the biggest step which the Pope took was allowed people to talk about these things. The doctrinal purity issues, what they do is they don't allow people to talk. And he allowed women, issues about should priests be celibate or not.
Right.
That's not the case in Roman Catholics. It's Protestants allow it. That's okay with them, but he allowed these discussions. So I would say that he had a new style. I wouldn't call him a new age, Shweta, because he was elected in 2013 after, as I said, resignation of Benedict. And he was the first pontiff to step down in 6 centuries, 600 years. And it was about, because there was a turmoil, there were financial issues, and cardinal electors sought a reformer with strong administrative hand. But very few people anticipated that Francis, then 76-year-old Archbishop of Buenos Aires, that's what I was saying, is a Latin American Pope, would blend the reformer's zeal and the sort of folksy charm together and work, which he did for 12 years, which he did. So he instituted areas in which conversations could take place without shaking the entire building. He didn't do that. But, he was a Pope who could play football, Shweta.
He's a Pope who could play football, a path breaker in his own accord, a man who believed in inclusivity, wasn't trying to really challenge the status quo, but trying to be a path breaker in his own accord, essentially, in a way, trying to establish himself without hurting others too much, challenging others too much, but in the process ended up perhaps not keeping either conservatives very happy or not aligning with liberals, as a matter of fact. A dichotomy of sort for a man who had a very rich legacy of 12 years as papacy. Before I let you go, Karthikeya, I think we are essentially talking about a man who leaves behind a rich legacy. As I mentioned, he's also going to be someone who's going to be path-breaking for the next popes to come, for Christian Catholic Roman Christians, for that matter, on what's going to be, as far as who's going to be the next pope and what would their legacy be like, because they have a very, very big shoes to fill.
Shweta, this is what is the surprising part. The American presidency and electoral system is actually inspired the way the Pope is elected, is actually inspired by the way papacy is elected. So people say, what's the connection of America and the papacy? That's how American electoral system works. But let me put it like this. He spoke about women. He spoke about transgenders. He had the Latin American populist roots. He saw the world differently. He evoked different names. For example, he became the first pontiff to take his papal name from St. Francis of Assisi, the austere friar who dedicated his life to piety and the poor, who, according to the tradition, received instruction from the God to rebuild the church. So he was not a traditionalist. He was not a doctrinal Puritan. And let me tell you, Francis signaled his humble style from the outset. Let me quote, he paid his own bill at the Vatican hotel where he stayed during the conclave that elected him, rode about the town in modest Ford Focus, lived in a Vatican guest house rather than the ornate papal apartments, in a Holy Week ritual performed at a youth prison, washed the feet of a young Muslim woman. Later in his ailing years, he referred to his own frailty in demanding the dignity for the aged. That is how I'm going to define the papacy. That is how I'm going to define Pope Francis. He actually spoke about the marginalized, and the marginalized in religion are women.
Right, marginalized in religion, women, people with little to no access, and he was their savior. He came to their rescue, and that is exactly what he did. He's going to, as I say, leave behind a very rich legacy, a life led in simplicity, but a legacy which is extremely rich when it comes to path-breaking efforts made by him in order to ensure that there is more equality, conversation around environment, constitution, conversation around how to make religion more accessible to people who don't perhaps have as much access. His 12 years in papacy, he is going to be a path breaker. He is now resting in peace.